Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Reflecting the Way Radio. I'm your host, Evan. Let's get started. Right out the gate here, we'll do some house cleaning. If you haven't done so already, be sure and check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Links to that are in the description box below. Also, be sure and head over to the website and check out the content there. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for the email list. That is reflectingtheway.com. That's also linked in the information box below if you're listening on Blog Talk Radio. If you want to sign up for the email newsletter, we don't send out an awful lot of stuff, maybe once a week, if that. I'd say it's more like twice a month. We will not spam your inbox, but you will have the inside track for all of the latest content, so be sure and sign up for that. You can find that form in the footer of every page and on the right-hand column of most other pages. If you're heading over to the website, be sure and check out the latest article we have. Guest post just actually went live a few hours ago if you're listening to this live tonight. If you're listening in the archive, it is a guest post entitled Trusting in Eternal Rather Than Temporal Things, and it's quite well written, and I would encourage you to go have a look at that. There's also a link to it on our Facebook feed and Twitter account as well. Okay, so the title tonight is Sin, Symbolism, and New Content, and that is actually all one thought. I was on Pine Ridge Warriors Radio last weekend. If you're listening to this on the archive, that would be January 17th of 2016. If you didn't hear that show, I would very much encourage you to go listen to it. Brother Curtis Horse was kind enough to have me on for 2 hours and pretty much gave me free reign of his show there, with just a break in the middle and a little bit on either end. But it's almost 2 straight hours of content. And that is exactly what the new content is that we'll be getting into here at Reflecting the Way over the coming weeks and probably months, because it is quite the topic. And that topic is Saturn. Now, some of you might be asking the question, what on earth does Saturn have to do with anything? And do you mean that ringed planet in the sky? The answer to the second half of that question is yes and no. And the answer to the first half of that question is absolutely everything. We're not going to get into it here tonight. This is more or less just an unveiling. But needless to say is I don't know who's all listening to this, but suffice it to say that this is a very deep topic and a very broad topic that touches on very many things. And you're going to start seeing some content related to this coming out here in the coming weeks, and we're probably going to be parked here for a while. Now, having said that, I'm going to tell you right up front that if you have the impression of yourself that you're weak in your faith or you're not well grounded in your understanding of Jesus, this might be a topic that you don't want to go into, because this will challenge you in every conceivable way and from one end of your theology to the other. It is not something to be entered into lightly, and at the risk of damaging my own traffic and ratings, I would encourage you that if you do not feel comfortable approaching new things and opening yourself up, and rather I should say, opening your theology up to criticism and auditing, I would encourage you to steer clear of this topic if you don't feel you are well grounded on a strong foundation. Because like I said, this will challenge you. This will challenge everything you think you know to its very core. And if you don't have a clear understanding of who Christ is and what he did, you might find yourself in some hot water. Now, I'm going to do my best to always bring this full circle, but it is a confusing topic at times, and frankly, if you don't have ears to hear, as Christ put it, you're not going to understand what it is I'm saying to you. So I would encourage you to use your discernment here in the coming weeks and just keep your guard up and make sure that you're going in with your spiritual armor on, because this can be a very intimidating topic. So just to give you a little bit of a primer, well, a lot of a primer would be if you go listen to the Pine Ridge Warriors radio show from January 17th. That will give you a bit of a groundwork. But I'll spend a couple minutes here and just give you a bit of an overview and a couple of caveats. If there's any heresy hunters listening tonight, I'm going to tell you right now, in the coming weeks and months, I'm going to give you ample ammunition to eviscerate me and get yourself lots of followers. That's not to say that I, by any means, am saying that I am a heretic, though I may have been called that in the past. But I'm going to be touching on some things that are pretty dark, and unfortunately, we have to bring the darkness into the light in order to expose it and be able to fight it. So for those listening that get a kick out of tearing others down and growing their own ministry, in air quotes, of tearing others apart, and that's how you get your traffic, I'm going to give you some ammunition. Now, for those of you who are genuinely wanting to learn, you will understand context, and you will understand that what I'm bringing out here, even though it is dark and ugly and uncomfortable at times, it's not that I will be endorsing these teachings. Rather, quite the opposite, I am exposing these teachings. And if you can't grasp that, and you can't understand what I'm saying when I say that, and you can't keep me in context, frankly, I would kindly encourage you to move along. You're not going to get anything out of this coming series of content anyway. But if you are the heresy hunter type, then I guess you're going to do what you're going to do. But having said that, for the rest of the folks that are listening out there that are genuinely interested in learning, I am going to stretch you a bit. I got to be honest. And over the next week, I don't imagine I'm going to have anything coming out in the next 7 days if you're listening to this live, specifically related to this. But in the next 7 days, I want you to take a good look around whenever you think of it. And I mentioned that the topic is Saturn. Now, there's a few symbols associated with Saturn, and I'm not going to get into how or why or their exact esoteric meanings on this episode, but just take a look around and start noticing how many of these things you see over the next week, and we're going to come back to it. Number one being a cube. Okay, if you notice a cube in a corporate logo or a square or any kind of permutation of a square / cube shape, take note. You'll start seeing it everywhere. Related directly to that is the hexagon, which is a two-dimensional version of a cube, right? If you draw a hexagon and connect every other corner in the center, it gives you a two-dimensional drawing of a three-dimensional cube. Start paying attention where you see hexagons and six-sided shapes. The other one is X's, and, well, I might as well throw this out there to some extent, and in some contexts, crosses as well. The reason is a cross is an unfolded cube, and if you haven't caught where I'm going with this yet, Saturn is associated with cubes, so just start paying attention where you're seeing these sort of things. The other one is rings or circles. Just to give you an example of where you might have seen a ring or a circle, if you think of the Nissan logo, that is actually just a representation of the planet Saturn. That's a pretty obvious one, but there's lots of examples everywhere. I'm sitting in front of my computer here, and I'm looking at the Skype logo. Well, the Skype logo is nothing more than the silhouette of the planet Saturn. Take a look. Internet Explorer, if you take a look, you have an E with a ring around it. That is the planet Saturn. If you go back to the cube and a cube, hexagon, square, X thing, where's the most famous place you see a hexagon anytime you turn on the news? Well, take a look at the flag of Israel. That will be a controversial one when we get there. But what is that six-sided star? Well, it has a hexagon in the middle. There's a reason for that. I'm just kind of shooting from my hip here, so some of this is maybe a little bit half-baked, but that's okay. Where else do you see cubes in the world? Well, I'll give you a hint, and it starts with the word Mecca. And if you're picking up what I'm putting down, you'll know that I'm referring to the Kaaba stone, which the Islamic world worships. And actually, we'll get into this in the coming weeks too. They're not the only religion that worships a black cube. In fact, Judaism is guilty of it, Christianity is guilty of it, and so are the Eastern religions, believe it or not. It's all tied in. So I'm kind of leaving you hanging here a little bit with regard to this symbolism thing, but I do want you to just start taking a look around when you're walking out in public or surfing around the internet, or next time you see a corporate logo, and just take a good hard look at the things, even the things in your house. What do you see? Samsung, that blue oval shape. Well, if you watch the animation, if you fire up a Samsung device, they're showing you there's light beams moving in a circle that is that blue part of their logo. Again, that's the rings of Saturn. It is literally everywhere. The color black is associated with the planet and the deity. The two are one and the same, essentially, and it goes by many names. So I just want you to pay attention over the next week and just start noticing, where do you see these things? And we're gonna cover this in detail over the next few months. And I'm hoping we have the opportunity to go deep on this one. And we might be here for a while. But I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to go too far into anything here tonight. I just wanted to make this bit of an announcement, and I wanted to get you to start looking. So that's really the bulk. That's really the content I had for you this evening. Is I just wanted to announce that and get you to look. Now, like I said at the top of the show here, this will get uncomfortable and dark and ugly. And again, if you're not ready for it, please move along and don't listen to it, because I don't want to be the one to tear you down. This is to build you up. But if you're weak, move along. Like I said, I'm saying that at my own risk, basically, because I'm encouraging people not to listen to me, but I want to make sure that those who can handle this information get it, and those who can't handle it don't. So use your discernment. And the other thing I'd like to mention here is that if you're going to go and do some of this homework yourself, you really need to make sure that you have your spiritual armor on. There are a lot of false teachers out there that will give you true information, but their interpretation of that information is highly skewed. And by highly skewed, I am being very generous. Literally, they are teaching you doctrines of demons. Their information is correct. Their conclusions are far from it. And that's something we're going to find here as we go into this topic, is that when you start researching these occult topics in any kind of depth, you come to learn that occult secrets are based on truth in a way that the fallen ones, the fallen angels, they are not creative beings in and of themselves. They're forced to take the things of the Creator God, so they take truth and they twist it into error. But they can't really create things themselves, so they're forced to work within this framework. And I say that to say this, that it's important to remember that all things were created by the Father, and they were all created good. The evil that's in the world is a byproduct of the twisting of fallen entities. When we get into this, we have to look into some ugly places that teach some ugly things, but you will find, and this is interesting, you will find that even in the occult and even in the arcane workings and brotherhoods, the data itself within those teachings and within those systems is not in and of itself evil. What they have done is they have taken truth and they have inverted it. They have twisted it and they have perverted it. But what their disgusting teachings are based on is mangled truth. And unfortunately, because churchianity proper in the world today is so supernatural phobic, they won't touch this with a 10-foot pole because they start screaming words like New Age at you, or heretic, or occultist, or witch, or whatever you want. When, let me make this crystal clear, I am not endorsing the occult in any way, but you have to know your enemy. Jesus said that the children of the world are wiser than the children of light in their generation. That wasn't giving the disciples and the people listening a gold sticker. It was an admonishment. Jesus is telling them, you guys need to smarten up and look around because your enemy's smarter than you. That tells me that these fallen systems know something we don't. And even though their application and understanding is dark, warped, twisted, and evil, they still know something we don't know. And we need to know it. That verse that's so commonly contorted, I believe it's in 1 Corinthians, where Paul, speaking to the Corinthian church, says that the workings of evil of these things, brethren, I wish you were ignorant. He's not saying you need to be ignorant, don't know this. What he's saying is, I wish you were ignorant, but you can't be ignorant, otherwise you're going to be devoured, basically. But that verse is turned on its head in so many churches that say, you can't look over here because you'll be deceived. Well, you'll be deceived if you're looking to be deceived, but if you're going in with the full armor of God and you are doing research in order to understand and to engage the evil, you will be protected from deception as long as you use your discernment and your spiritual weapons of war. So this is basically me covering myself. Honestly, it is, because we're going to go some places that some people normally wouldn't go. But understand, it is for a purpose. It is not to glorify the devil by any means. And I've had it said to me that, oh, you give the devil too much credit. You make the devil too big. Well, okay, you can say that if you want, but consider this for a moment. If you make the devil big, or maybe he is big and you just haven't seen it before, but if you make the devil big, how much bigger must your Father be? Because these same folks that will say, you're making the devil big, they're the same types that seem to have a very, very small God in a lot of ways. So, like I said, this is basically my insurance, and I will point people back to this episode and tell them to listen to it and make sure they're covered before they move into this field of research. And again, if you're doing your own research, make sure you know who you're listening to, what they're about, before you go and believe them out of hand, because you are setting yourself up a little bit if you do that kind of thing. There are topics within this field of study, this Saturn symbolism and Saturnalian occultism, that are extremely hard to explain away without divine revelation. And I've had at least one instance of divine revelation that really put all the pieces together for me here, and we're going to work up to that. We may come to that sooner rather than later, but that's kind of where I'm going to end it for this recording, ladies and gentlemen. It was a short episode today, but that's where we're going, and that's my warning to you. And again, this next week, I want you to look around. Look for those cubes, squares, hexagons, and circles, and rings. Look for it and just notice everywhere you start seeing those shapes. It may surprise you. And with that, I will leave you this evening, and blessings.